My best friend of 12 years had been sleeping with my wife. For 8 months. My parents knew, my older sister knew. My uncle knew. The only person who didn't know was me. The guy paying the mortgage, covering the health insurance, and texting my best friend links to hiking trails because I thought we were planning a trip together in the spring. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I didn't confront anyone at a kitchen table while my mother cried into a dish towel. I disappeared. And 3 years later, they're still trying to find a version of me that's willing to come back. My name is Garrett. I was 31 when everything happened. I work in commercial HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning systems for large buildings, office complexes, hospitals, university campuses. The kind of work that requires precision and patience, because when you get it wrong, 300 people on the 4th floor either can't breathe or can't think straight. I was good at my job. I traveled 4 or 5 days a month to oversee installations and system audits at client sites across the Midwest. Not constantly gone, but gone enough that certain people, apparently, decided to rearrange my life while I was away. My wife's name was Kelsey. We'd been married 4 years, together for 6. She managed a boutique fitness studio downtown. Cycling classes, yoga, that whole world where everyone knows everyone and looks great doing it. She was social in the way that fills a room. Remembered people's dogs' names, sent birthday texts, showed up to things. I used to think it meant she was generous. Now I think it meant she was good at keeping multiple versions of her life running simultaneously without any of them touching. My best friend's name was Mitch. We met freshman year of college. Both engineering students. Both completely lost in a city neither of us had grown up in. We figured it out together. He was in my wedding. He helped me move into the house Kelsey and I shared. He ate dinner at our table, probably 40 times in the years we were married. He borrowed my truck twice when his was in the shop. He called me on random Tuesdays just to complain about his job. I helped him because he was my best friend. That is what I believed right up until the Tuesday in October, when I came home from a systems audit in Columbus 2 days early. The audit wrapped ahead of schedule. My project lead told me to head home and take the rest of the week. Most of the team went to a bar near the hotel. I drove the 3.5 hours back instead. I didn't call Kelsey because I wanted to surprise her. That detail still gets me sometimes. Not in a painful way anymore, more like finding an old receipt in a jacket pocket from a restaurant that no longer exists. A small artifact from a person I used to be. I thought she would be happy to see me. I turned onto our street a little after 9 at night, and saw Mitch's truck in the driveway. Behind Kelsey's car, parked like it lived there. I kept driving, parked a block away, sat with the engine off. Hestis Smart's working overtime in that moment. Defense attorney mode. Maybe his alternator went again. Maybe they were watching a movie, and Kelsey didn't mention it. Maybe he needed to borrow something and stayed for dinner. Maybe I was about to walk in on 2 people watching television and feel like an idiot for hesitating. I sat there for an hour and 40 minutes. The front door opened. Mitch came out first. Then Kelsey stepped onto the porch. She was wearing the gray sleep shirt she always changed into right after dinner. Nothing else. She had her arms wrapped around herself against the October air, and she was smiling the way she smiled when something had gone exactly how she wanted it to. He turned back. They hugged. Not the hug of 2 people who had been watching television. Long, slow, familiar. He said something close to her ear. She laughed quietly. Then he got in his truck and backed out of the driveway, and she stood there on the porch, watching until his headlights disappeared around the corner. Then she went back inside my house. I sat in that car until almost 2 in the morning. I didn't cry. I didn't drive back to the house. I didn't call anyone. Something in me went very still. By the time I found a motel off the highway, I had already understood one thing clearly. If I walked in that door tonight, they would get a scene. They would get tears and raised voices, and explanations. They would get an opportunity to shape the narrative, before I had any of the facts. I wasn't going to give them that. I needed to know how far it went. The next morning, I went home like nothing had happened. Kelsey was in the kitchen with coffee. She looked surprised for half a second, then lit up. "You're back early." "Yeah, wrapped up, faster than expected." She hugged me. I hugged her back. She smelled like her shampoo. I told her I missed her. She said she missed me too, and that the house felt strange when I traveled. That was the first moment I understood what people mean when they say a person can survive anything once they stop feeling it in real time. For the next 10 days, I played husband. I brought home groceries. I asked about her day. I sat next to her on the couch. I went to bed beside her. I kept my face exactly where she expected it to be. While she thought I was at work, I was building a case. Her phone first. She had never changed her passcode. Still my college graduation year. That hit harder than it should have. The messages went back 7 months. 7 months of scheduling around my work calendar. 7 months of Mitch asking when I was leaving again, what time I'd be back, whether I was the type to check location sharing. 7 months of Kelsey telling him I was low maintenance, that I trusted her completely, That I'd never suspect because I wasn't that kind of guy. That last part I read 3 times. I took screenshots of everything. Saved them to a cloud account she didn't know existed. Emailed copies to myself. Printed key exchanges at the FedEx on the far side of town. Then the finances. I pulled 3 months of joint account statements. Cash withdrawals I hadn't made. Venmo transfers to Mitch, when I'd asked about one of them months ago. Just casually, doing our monthly budget check. Kelsey said he'd covered us when my card declined at a restaurant, and she was paying him back. I remembered accepting that. I remembered thinking it was a normal thing between friends. I was paying my best friend back for covering dinner while he was sleeping with my wife in my house. I added everything to a folder. Dates, transfers, messages, screenshots. A timeline built the same way I'd build a project log, clean, organized, time-stamped. Then I found the email. It was in her drafts folder, unsent. She'd started writing it, saved it, and either forgotten it was there or decided not to send it yet. It was addressed to Mitch. It said she was late, that she'd taken 2 tests, that she didn't know what to do, that she needed to talk to him before she decided anything. I read it in the parking lot of a Target at 11 in the morning, sitting in my car with the heat running. I read it twice. Then I closed the phone and stared at the windshield for a long time. I added the email to the folder. That evening, I called my older sister. Not to tell her, just to check in. Normal call. We talked for 20 minutes. She was warm, asked about work, asked about Kelsey. Said they should come over sometime, we should all do dinner. Something about the way she said it felt practiced, like she was filling space. I started thinking. My parents hosted a cookout the following Saturday. They did it every year before the weather turned, a last chance before winter thing, ribs, and corn, and my dad acting like managing the grill was a serious responsibility. I told Kelsey I thought we should go. She agreed immediately, quickly, like she'd been hoping I'd bring it up. At the cookout I watched instead of participating. Kelsey stayed close to my mom. My sister found reasons to be near Kelsey. My dad kept finding small tasks to busy himself with whenever I was nearby. Mitch wasn't there, but his name came up. My uncle mentioned he'd seen him recently. My mom changed the subject fast. They weren't being subtle. They were just assuming I wasn't paying attention. After the food, I sat next to my dad at the table on the back deck. I told him my company was talking about putting me on a long-term project. Chicago probably. 8 months minimum, starting in January. My dad set down his cup. My mother sitting 3 feet away said, 8 months? Garrett, you just got settled. Is that really what you want? Kelsey looked at her plate. My sister looked at the fence line. My dad said, hey, can you help me check on something in the garage for a second? There it was. I followed him inside. My mom came with us. My sister appeared in the doorway 30 seconds later like she'd been stationed there. My dad cleared his throat. He's not a speech guy. He's the kind of man who communicates, mostly through action. Fixed things when they broke, showed up when you needed him, didn't say much. That's what made what came next feel so wrong. He had clearly rehearsed it. He said they needed to talk to me about something. That it was difficult. That they'd been holding on to it because they didn't want to hurt me, but they also knew I deserved to understand what was happening. My mom stepped in, said Kelsey had been going through something. That she'd made a mistake. That it was with someone I knew, and that it had started during a stretch when I was traveling a lot, and that she thought I should hear it from family before it went any further. I kept my face neutral. I said, who? My dad didn't answer fast enough. My mom's eyes filled up. My sister looked at the floor. Mitch, my mom finally said. I nodded once. How long have you known? More silence. My mom said, Garrett, what matters right now is, how long? My sister said, a couple months. She couldn't look at me, I did the math. A couple months. While I was inviting him to Thanksgiving. While I was texting him about that spring hiking trip. While I was covering his share of the bills the one time he was between jobs and said he was struggling. My dad said, we didn't know how to tell you. We thought it was going to stop on its own. My mom put her hand on my arm. They ended it. It's done now. And she wants to make this work if you're willing to try. You have a life together, a home and, she paused. My sister said, there might be a pregnancy. I looked at my mom. Is there or isn't there? She said they weren't sure. That Kelsey had told them she thought she might be. But that nothing was confirmed. My dad said, whatever happens we're family. And family works through things. My uncle appeared in the doorway holding a can of soda. When he saw all of us standing there he said, oh. He knows? Nobody moved. My uncle nodded slowly. Good. Needed to happen. That was the moment. Not the message on her phone. Not the draft email. That was the moment I understood the actual scope of it. They had all been sitting around a table that didn't include me. Deciding what to say, when to say it, how to frame it. My wife, my best friend, my parents, my sister, my uncle, a coordinated presentation, a managed reveal. And I was the last item on the agenda. I said, I needed some air. My mom started to follow. I said I was fine. She stopped. Outside, the backyard was empty. I walked to the side gate, opened it, and stood in the driveway for a minute. Mitch had texted me the night before asking if we were still on for a game that weekend. I hadn't answered yet. Now I understood what that text was actually doing, checking whether I knew anything. My dad came outside. He stood near me without speaking for a moment. Then he said, "I know this is a lot, but don't do anything you can't take back." I said, "I'm going to head out." He said, "You're not staying for dinner?" I said no. He nodded. He didn't try to stop me, which was the first genuinely decent thing that had happened all afternoon. Kelsey appeared at the corner of the house. She said my name quietly, said we should talk. I said sure, got in my car. In the rearview mirror, all of them were there. My wife, my parents, my sister, my uncle. Standing at the edge of my parents' driveway watching me pull away. They probably thought I needed to cool down. That I'd call someone in a couple of days. That the next move was tears, then conversation, then some version of negotiating what the marriage looked like after this. They didn't know me as well as they thought. I drove straight to my college friend Marcus. No. Not Marcus, different story. I drove to my friend Kevin. Kevin had gone to law school while I went into engineering. He handled contracts, property, civil disputes. He was the only person in my life completely outside the blast radius. He opened his door in sweats, holding takeout chopsticks, looked at my face and said, "What happened?" I said I needed a lawyer and a plan. He let me in. I sat at his kitchen table and laid everything out. The screenshots, the timeline, the transfers, the draft email, the cookout, the managed family reveal. He read everything without talking. When he finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Okay," he said, "what do you want?" "I don't want a conversation," I said. "I don't want couples counseling. I don't want to sit across from anyone in a room and process feelings. I want to be completely gone. Legally, financially, physically. I want to extract myself so cleanly that there's nothing to argue over." He became a lawyer then. Pulled up property records on his laptop. Asked questions. The house I had bought at 14 months before Kelsey and I got married. Separate property in our state, with a documented paper trail of my payments, renovations, tax filings. She had limited claim unless she could prove substantial contribution, which she couldn't. Her name wasn't on the mortgage and her income had never been part of the payment history. Joint checking account had around $38,000. Most of it traceable to my deposits. He said I could move it as a joint account holder. Said her attorneys might push back but the deposit records would hold. I said do it. He said, "Once you start this it moves fast." "You sure?" I said there was no version of this where I didn't start it. He nodded and opened a blank document. "Then we do it right." Monday morning I called my supervisor. "Family situation," I said. "I need to use some vacation." He said take what I needed. I had 11 days saved. Reliable Garrett. Never took time off. The kind of employee people assume will always be there because he always has been. I texted Kelsey that afternoon. "Work issue, won't be home tonight." She replied with a heart emoji and asked if I was okay. I said yes. I put the phone down. By Wednesday Kevin had the paperwork in motion. I opened a new checking account at a credit union 2 towns over, moved the joint funds, closed the joint savings. Removed Kelsey from my insurance policy. The car she drove daily was in my name. I'd bought it used before we got married, kept making payments through the marriage, never transferred the title. I canceled her addition to my auto policy. That was going to become her problem soon. Thursday I called a realtor I found online. Out of town, no mutual contacts. Listed the house quietly. No yard sign, no open house. 3 days later, a cash offer came in. We were under contract before Kelsey knew the house was on the market. Friday divorce papers were filed. A process server delivered them to the fitness studio on a Tuesday morning, while she was running her 10 o'clock cycling class. My phone lit up 18 minutes later. I declined the call. It rang again, I declined it. Then text came. "What is this? Call me. You can't do this without talking to me first." Then my mom. Then my sister. Then Mitch, which almost made me laugh. Audacious enough to call the husband. 41 missed calls by that evening. I didn't listen to a single voicemail. The following week, I called HR. Asked about transfer options. There was a regional division in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle and the surrounding areas, large commercial contracts, a team that had been short-staffed for over a year. I asked if they'd take me. The regional manager said yes before I finished the sentence. I got a new phone, new number, new carrier. Kept the old one in a dresser drawer. Not because I planned to use it, because I wanted to know how long they'd keep trying. I packed one bag, work clothes, tools, laptop, documents, everything else stayed. The couch we picked out together, the wedding photos, the blender she loved, the throw blankets she'd arranged on the sofa like it was a catalog shoot. I left a note on the kitchen counter. One sentence. House closes in 30 days. Make arrangements. No signature. Sunday at 4 in the morning I loaded my car. I stood in the doorway of the house for a few seconds. The porch light Kelsey always left on. The kitchen I had renovated myself the summer before we got married. The living room where Mitch had sat on my couch drinking my beer, while apparently planning to dismantle my life. For one moment, something moved through me. Heavy and gray. Then I got in the car and drove west. Seattle is not the city people think it is from the outside. It's wetter, quieter, more indifferent. The mountains are real in a way that makes everything else feel slightly fictional. I arrived on a Thursday, checked into a long-stay hotel in Bellevue, and sat on the bed in a room that smelled like industrial cleaning products, and felt like exactly the right amount of nothing. I started the new job the following Monday. New team, new projects, a hospital expansion, a university dormitory complex, a mixed-use high-rise. People who knew me as Garrett from the Seattle office. Not Garrett from whatever had happened in his old life. Nobody asked personal questions because nobody had context for personal questions. I worked 12-hour days when the projects needed it. I ran in the mornings. I ate at the same 3 places near my apartment because decision fatigue is real, and I had used up my quota. At night, I lay in the quiet and felt it settle. 6 weeks after I arrived, I turned on the old phone. 263 messages. 91 missed calls. I scrolled through without opening most of them. Kelsey had started angry. How could you sell our house? Where am I supposed to go? This is cruel and you know it. Then, I know what I did was wrong, but you didn't even give me a chance to explain. Then please just tell me where you are. I'm scared. The baby was Mitch's. I know you probably already know that. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know that's not enough. My mom had sent 17 messages over 6 weeks. The first few were appeals. The middle ones were updates. She'd talked to Kelsey. She was worried about me. My dad was stressed. The last one was a single line. Your father hasn't slept properly in a month. Please just tell us you're alive. Mitch had written 4 times. The first 2 were defensive. Come on, man, let's talk about this. This isn't the whole story. Then, I know I messed up. I don't know how to fix this. Then, sent 2 weeks later at midnight. I think about it every day. I know there's nothing I can say. I just needed to say something. I read that last one twice. Then I turned the phone off and put it back in the drawer. Kevin called my new number a few weeks later. DNA test result had come back. Court ordered as part of the divorce proceedings. Mitch was the father. My name didn't appear on the birth certificate. No child support obligation. No custody arrangement. No legal connection. He said it simply. You're clear. I was standing on a ferry crossing Puget Sound at the time, going to a site visit on Bainbridge Island. Mountains on every side. Water that looked like brushed steel. I said thanks and hung up. The divorce finalized 4 months after I filed. Kelsey received a small settlement, personal items, and a fraction of marital assets that Kevin's documentation had made very difficult to inflate. No house. No car. No piece of the life I had rebuilt. Mitch's professional reputation didn't survive the story getting around. Our mutual friends, people I hadn't contacted since I left, apparently talked. One of them reached out through an old email address to say he was sorry. That he'd cut contact with Mitch, that the whole thing was disgusting. I replied once. Thanks. Take care. Then I archived the thread and didn't think about it again. I rented a 1-bedroom apartment in a neighborhood on Seattle's east side that had good coffee and a park where dogs were allowed off leash. I started running the park loop in the mornings. That became a ritual. The kind of small, repeatable thing that makes a new place start to feel like it belongs to you. I met a woman named Dara at a project kickoff meeting. She worked in structural engineering for the firm we were partnering with on the hospital expansion. She had a dry sense of humor, a directness that I found immediately comfortable, and a complete lack of interest in performing. On the 3rd or 4th time we ended up at the same lunch spot, she said, "You're very quiet for someone who seems to have opinions about everything." I says I'm selective. She said, "Smart." We had dinner 2 weeks later. I didn't tell her anything about Ohio or Kelsey, or Mitch that first night. She didn't push. I appreciated that more than I could have explained at the time. The old phone lived in a shoebox on the top shelf of my closet. Every few weeks I turned it on. The messages slowed after month 3. My mom checked in periodically. My sister went from frantic to quiet to occasional. Mitch stopped writing after month 4. Kelsey sent one more message in the spring. The baby is healthy. His name is Caden. I know you have no reason to care. I just thought you should know. I looked at the message for a moment, then I closed the phone. Some people, when I've told parts of this story, want to talk about the baby. They want me to feel something specific about him. Either softness because he's innocent, or something harder because of what his existence represents. I understand both impulses. I chose neither. The child was not my responsibility to reshape a life around. He had a mother. He had a father. He had grandparents. He did not need an uncle who only existed in relation to the worst thing that had ever happened to him. That's not cruelty, that's just math. 14 months after I left Ohio, my sister found my new address. I don't know how. A mutual contact probably, or some creative searching. She sent a card, sexual paper, in an envelope with her handwriting on it. She said she'd made a terrible mistake by not telling me sooner, that she'd been afraid of what it would do to the family if she brought it up, and that she understood if I never forgave her. She said our mom was in therapy. She said our dad had high blood pressure now and their doctor had tied it directly to stress. She said Mitch had moved back to his hometown in Indiana. She said she missed me. I read the card twice, put it in a drawer, didn't respond. 3 months after that, my mom sent a letter. Handwritten, 4 pages. She wrote about their regret, she wrote about the weight of having carried it. She wrote that she had told herself it was going to resolve on its own. That she was protecting me, by waiting for the right moment. And that she understood now that there was never going to be a right moment. She had just been protecting herself from a hard conversation. She asked me not to disappear permanently. She said the family was fractured. And it didn't feel like it could heal without me in it somewhere. I stared at that phrase for a while. Without me in it somewhere. Like I was load-bearing architecture in a building other people lived in. I put the letter in the drawer with the card. Around that time, Dara and I had been seeing each other for several months. One evening, she asked why I never talked about Ohio. Not a confrontation. Just a quiet question, late at night, the kind that surfaces when two people are comfortable enough to stop filling silence. I told her. The whole thing. Took about 40 minutes. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she sat with it for a moment. Then she said, "What do you need from me right now?" Not what did I think about forgiveness. Not what she thought I should do. Just, what do you need? I said nothing. I just needed to say it out loud, to someone who didn't already have a version of the story. She nodded. Okay. That was it. We went to sleep. In the morning she made coffee and didn't mention it again unless I brought it up first. I can't overstate how much that mattered. 2 years after I left, my dad had a minor cardiac event. My sister called my cell. She'd had the number for months, had only used it twice. She said it wasn't life-threatening, that he was stable, that she wasn't telling me to come back, but that she thought I should know. I said I was glad he was okay. She asked if I was going to visit. I said no. She said she understood, even though her voice made clear she didn't entirely. I called my dad's cell phone that evening. He answered on the third ring. His voice sounded the same. Low, steady, not a lot of wasted words. I said, "Hey, heard you had a scare." He said, "I'm all right." We talked for about 8 minutes. About nothing in particular, the hospital food, his cardiologist, a renovation project he was planning when he was recovered. He didn't mention Kelsey or Mitch. I didn't mention them either. At the end he said, "I'm glad you called, son." I said, "Take care of yourself." We hung up. I stood in my kitchen for a minute after. Then I fed the dog. I'd gotten a dog, a mutt named Hank, who had opinions about everything and was deeply suspicious of bicycles. And went to bed. That phone call was the single point of re-entry I allowed. Not a return. Not forgiveness. Just proof of life. Traded quietly. Between two men who both knew what had gone wrong, and had nothing left to argue about it. My sister called again a year later to say our parents were doing better. That Kelsey had moved to a different city. That Mitch was engaged to someone, which she delivered like might upset me and seemed surprised when it didn't. I said that was fine. She asked if we could maybe have dinner sometime when she was out west visiting a friend. I said I'd think about it. I haven't thought about it much. Dara and I got engaged last fall. No big ceremony planned. A small thing, the two of us and a few people who know us as us. Not as anyone's history. She laughed when I told her I wanted to elope, then agreed immediately, which is one of the reasons I asked her. The old phone is in the shoebox. I turned it on once over the summer, more out of habit than curiosity. There were 6 unread messages from the past year. I didn't open them. I turned the phone off and put it back. People hear a story like this and they want a moral. They want the version where someone's suffering leads to insight. Where the absence causes the guilty parties to truly transform. Where the person who left eventually opens a door and lets the complicated mess of family back in, softened by time. That's a satisfying shape. I understand why people prefer it. But I didn't leave to punish anyone. I left because the people closest to me had demonstrated, clearly and collectively, that my comfort in the truth was less important than their comfort in a lie. They had held a meeting I wasn't invited to. They had chosen a story that required my silence to function, and when I refused to provide that silence, they called it cruelty. It wasn't cruelty. It was just the first honest thing any of us had done in months. My life in Seattle is not a revenge fantasy. It is just a life, a good one, built from the pieces I carried out the door at 4 a.m. on a Sunday. A dog that hates bicycles. A woman who asks what I need instead of telling me what I owe. Work that matters. A city that doesn't know my last name in relation to anyone else's story. The guilt they carry is theirs. I didn't give it to them. They made it and they keep it. I stopped providing the conditions they needed to put it down. Some people call that cold. Maybe. But I haven't lost a night of sleep over it. And some mornings I stand at my kitchen window with coffee, watching the neighborhood come to life, and I feel something I don't have a better word for than clean. Not happy in the uncomplicated way people mean when they say it, just clean. Like weather after a long front finally passes. Like a room where every piece of furniture belongs to the present and not the pain. That's the part they never understood when they imagined what my silence was doing to me. They thought absence was the punishment. They thought I was sitting somewhere, suffering the cost of my own disappearing act. They had it backwards. The silence wasn't something I was enduring. It was something I had built. Carefully, intentionally, one decision at a time. And inside it, I was fine.